Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am Jen Sugarmeyer, your host of Mindset in the Morning, and we are here live 5 days a week at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. But because this is YouTube, you can tune in whenever you would like. And we are here talking all things mindset so that you can exercise your mental muscle before you head out. And just like any players would get ready and stretch before they go out on the field, that's exactly what we're doing with our mind. There's this holy trinity of health, and that is mind, body, soul. And you have to take care of all three. And we know that we need to get out there and exercise, and we know we need to meditate and take care of our soul. But what are we doing for our mind? And what I found after I jumped out of corporate and I became a coach and started jumping into the world of mindset is that people get a little uncomfortable and defensive and say, I don't need mindset. I'm good. The truth is, I'm a mindset coach. I'm doing mindset all throughout the day. All throughout the day. So this isn't just a one-time thing. If you think about it, life is a decision matrix, constantly a decision matrix. You are being faced with more questions and decisions and situations all day long. And so when you know the tools that are up here, the 6 inches in between your ears, then you're able to prepare for life. You're able to respond just like you would on the field after you've practiced the plays before they happen. You are ready. You are prepared for life, and you know how you will respond. So we normalize just normal situations. We just talk about, where does mindset fit into that? And that's what Mindset in the Morning is all about. And I found my red lipstick today. So in honor of me finding my red lipstick, because I was super excited, I'm doing red today. So we've been talking about expectations this week. On Monday, we talked about how, the expectations that others have on us and how that feels and how we can deal with that. And then yesterday, we talked about the expectations that we have on other people. And today we're going to talk about why your expectations might not be met. And the truth is, expectations are a funny thing, and they're powerful. We all have them. We all have expectations. You know, we grew up in a certain way. Our expectations come from, I don't know, the people that we grew up with, our parents, the school we went to, the area we lived in. We expect certain things because some things have always been a certain way. Now, even if you grew up and in a military family and you were constantly moving around and, you know, you lived in all different countries and cities and it wasn't quite all the same for you, you still grew up and you still had some things. Maybe the expectation is that change is normal and that change should happen every couple of years. So whatever your situation is, it doesn't mean that it had to have been one way your entire life. There's some level of habits that you've been able to form, and expectations and thoughts and beliefs and values, and you're a person. You're a human. You're not a robot. There are things that you want, things that you need. And so expectations at this point in your life, you have some. And we want to make sure that our expectations are being met if they're reasonable. I'll say if they're reasonable. If you have an expectation that you are going to go into the gym on January 1st and lose 30 pounds and walk out with a six pack, that's not a realistic expectation. So let's start there. First and foremost, are your expectations reasonable? I mean, have you thought about, and these are when you're dealing with people, this is weight loss, this is how quickly can you get home from the office, this is, the size of raise that you think your boss is going to be giving you. These are rules that you have in your house. Expectations are really they're not rules. It's what you expect. It's when something happens, you believe this is going to be the result. That's what you expect the result to be. So have you looked through your expectations, which are everywhere, and said, hey, are these reasonable? Is it reasonable to think that my weight loss is going to happen in one day? Or have you maybe mapped it out a little bit, been a little more realistic with yourself? Have you ever heard of SMART goals? You know, SMART goals, they talk about those a lot about in the corporate arena. I don't know that I've heard it so much outside of the office. I've heard it a little bit within the coaching space, but it has. So if you're going to set a goal, set a SMART goal, have it specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. So think about these SMART goals in terms of think about in terms of your expectations, how this would fit in the SMART goals. They have to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. I don't know why the second time around I had to think what every single one of those were. The first time I didn't have to think about it. So make sure that they are reasonable. Okay. Go through the SMART model and see if your expectations are matching that, or if you're way off board. And again, it doesn't have to be something so ginormous. It could be the smaller things, because expectations are in everything. All right. Secondly, communication. And this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. Have you communicated your expectations to other people? Communication is the largest driver of divorce, or one of the largest. I can't remember if it's the top or the top two, but it's up there. It's up in the top two, whether it's the top or the second, but it's one of the top two. And that's because people have expectations of each other and they're not talking about them, or they have things that are going on with inside of them and they're not talking about them, or they have wants or they have needs and they're not talking about them. And when we don't tell the other person and we just think that, oh, they should know, it means that we're treating the other person like they're a mind reader, and none of us are mind readers. I mean, I get it. You spend a lot of time with that person. You think that they should know that you don't want to vacuum for Christmas. Come on. I get it. But maybe they thought that truly is what would make you happy. And you didn't tell them that you really wanted a new dress. You wanted a specific dress from a specific store. How would they know? And you keep complaining about your vacuum. So they thought it'd be a nice thing. And those Dysons are really expensive. You know what I'm saying? They could be like $300-$400. So maybe if you just told your significant other that you wanted this $200 dress, it actually would have been less. So it wasn't a financial thing. It wasn't a sexist thing. It was something that had thought put into it. It just wasn't what you wanted. It wasn't what you expected. You expected something else because you thought you dropped little hints, but these little hints didn't resonate. And we do this so often. I want you to, this is going to be part of your homework today, is when you think about, where are you putting expectations that you haven't communicated? And maybe you're just dropping these little hints, but how much easier would it be? Or how much likelier would it be to get the outcome that you want if we just learned a little more direct communication? Communication is one of these things that I've noticed over my lifetime. And I'm sort of in this, right where I'm at in my life is like right between the millennial generation and the next generation. Like I'm right on the cusp, because I didn't grow up with computers, so I'm not a millennial. And so, but I'm right in the middle. So I see where, communication happened a lot more. And now I see this entire generation, what comes after that, Gen Z or the next generation. I don't even know what the heck they're called. Anyway, all the younger kids, like 40 and younger, or let's say 35 and younger, they all grew up with computers in their hands and, and they just learned to type. This is how they communicate to each other. It's over text message. It's over maybe email. It's over Facebook. It's liking people's, pictures and commenting. And that's how we communicate a lot of times. And there's a whole element that is being missed out of that. Whereas the older generation is used to sitting down. But what I've noticed is that we've become uncomfortable just communicating in general. We've got different communication styles. People are sensitive to each other. They don't want, I don't want to offend them by saying something. You don't have to be offensive. You just need to say what it is that you need. No one's asking you to be offensive, but you need to stand up for you. And you have to do it in a way that's going to be well received by people. I mean, if you went around and you were a bully, that's not going to go over well. You have to do this, you have to do this. Then people would just be scared of you. But you have to set those standards, those boundaries, those expectations, all of the rules that govern yourself. You're the one that has to set them. And you're also the one that's responsible for communicating them. Because if you're going around and thinking that everybody should just know, look, nobody has time. I'm going to tell you straight. Nobody has time to just be guessing what is in your head. We are all dealing with some heavy stuff. People have their own families. They have, and I know this might be the person that you're married to, and they still have their own stuff. Okay. Because they're their own person. That person might not even have a job. They still have their own stuff. We're trying to keep up our own mental health every single day. That is a battle that each and every one of us are facing. So it doesn't matter if you're married to the person or if you just work with the person, or if this is just an acquaintance friend of yours. If there is a certain way, if there's a certain expectation, if there's a certain need, if there's a certain boundary, if there's a certain level, whatever it is, that needs to be communicated. It takes out the ambiguity and you tell them direct. This is what I expect. Now, I would then open that conversation or be willing to listen to what they have to say. Because you may have an expectation. And again, look to see if you think that this is realistic for yourself and for the other person. Is this a realistic expectation? Okay, let me think through this. I've been doing this for 20 years. I just hired somebody and they've only been doing this for 6 months. Is it a reasonable expectation that I would think that they can do it as fast as I can? Like, use common sense as you go through this. Now, it may be a reasonable expectation to think that after 20 years that this person should be able to do something as well as you, or, like you, or, if you train them. You have to equip people. I'm giving you leadership skills here, and this could be in the office, this can be in your home. But to have that expectation that what works for you now is going to work for somebody who doesn't have the same amount of time. And the truth is, we're all different. In 20 years, that person may never get to the level where you are, because this is your core skill set. This other person, it might not even be what ultimately they want to do. So do they really want to invest the same level of energy? Do they have that same passion, that same fire as you? We're all different. We're not cookie cutter. And it can get hard when you're in the office and you think, man, well, I do it this way. You absolutely should do it this way. This is what my expectation is. But let's sit down and think through it. So after you've baselined it for yourself and you've said, is this reasonable for me to even think that I can impress what works for me onto somebody else? Is that reasonable? And then have that conversation. Hey, I expect this to be done in 30 minutes. Have that conversation and maybe approach it and say, hey, I want to make sure that my expectations are realistic. What do you think about this? So that they feel like they're part of a conversation, not being dictated what to do. You'll know which conversation that may fit into. I think that's a really great way of approaching a situation, especially if you're working with the subordinate and talking to them, but it does, you don't want to make it feel like you're forcing things on them, that they have some collaboration in this. Because when people feel ownership in this, then they're more willing to put forth the energy. If they feel like it's dictated to them, this is my job, I have to do this, They don't have that passion. They don't have that fire. They're just going through the motions. So you want them to feel like they're connected. So sit down, have that conversation. Say, okay, all right. So you think it'll take maybe 2 hours? Okay. How about over this next month, we see if we can get this down to, you think, an hour and a half? And we'll just continue to monitor it so that ultimately we can get it to where it's a 30-minute activity. I don't know. I'm just making this up. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm just saying an example here, but work towards it so that you're building up to where you want to be, so that collaboratively you can see the roadmap and say, okay, this is how this would look. Sit down, have that conversation, allow that other person to participate. You are not a dictator. You've got your thoughts and ideas, and that's totally valid. What works for you has worked for you. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but that's all you know. Maybe you know some other people, you've been able to see them, but you base a lot of things off of yourself, but you are not everybody else. And you don't want to be everybody else. You are your own unique self, and you may do things faster, better. You may be smarter. I know a lot of really smart people, and I think, wow, that's impressive. I will never be able to win trivia the way that you can win trivia. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. If their expectation is that they're going to put me on their team and I'm going to be awesome at trivia, it's not even an interest of mine. I just don't care about all these little fun facts. It's just, okay, maybe a few, but it's not me. So you have to have the conversation and allow the other person to tell you where they are. You may find that that other person is dealing with something really heavy. And so you want their 100% attention, but right now, their husband is going through cancer. Their mother just fell and had to get her hip replaced. There could be something really heavy, and we have to work with people. So let's not assume. Let's not assume. You know what they say assume means? It's, if you spell assume, literally it makes an ass out of you and me. ASSUME, ass you me. So don't assume, because it doesn't always put you in the best position. Okay. So have the conversation, sit down, say it in a nice way that's being received. And, people want to participate in that. But if you are just assuming that people are going to be reading your mind and giving you the gift that you want and the party that you want and going to work up to your level of expectation, and you haven't laid it out, then it's going to lead you down a path of potential resentment, anger, frustration, all of these things. So if you want to be a good leader, first, think about, are these reasonable? Are these reasonable for me to set? And then secondly, I want to encourage you to have this conversation. And again, allow the other person to participate depending on what you're talking about. This isn't a dictatorship. Now, if you're saying, hey, this is what I'd like for, my birthday, you can say that, but financially, it might not be reasonable for somebody. You don't necessarily have to have that conversation, but you can. The only way we're ever going to know is to sit down and communicate. And we've just gotten away from that as a society, and we need to get back. I mean, I love direct communication. And I will tell you, especially when I was in corporate doing vendor management, one of the things that I heard the most, one of the comments that I heard the most was, thank you so much for your transparency, because so often we don't get it. I'll tell people, we don't have space for you here. And it might sound harsh, but then they know, don't keep going back to Jen. I'll say, hey, contact me in 6 months, because vendors are going to continue every single week. And that's their time. I don't want to waste their time. I'm telling you, look, this is how it is. We already have our suppliers in this field. So you can try back again in a year, 6 months. That's fine. But don't come knocking next week, because I'm not going to answer. Like, it sounds, maybe I'll say it in a slightly nicer way, but that's kind of what my conversations would sound like. Maybe just slightly nicer. And they appreciated that. So let's work on this open communication, because I want you to have your expectations met, but you're responsible for communicating them. You're responsible for them. If you're keeping them in your head, how are people going to know? Be realistic and communicate. So as you go out in the world today, think about all your expectations and where you can, think through them, think if they're realistic, and what conversations you can have around them to make it better, not just for you, but for the other person as well, because they don't want to let you down. All right. I will see you back here, same time, same place tomorrow. Oh, and if you've not yet hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now, because that helps this algorithm. I appreciate you and your time, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Go be powerful. Cheers.